Anybody has to join? Shall we? We can commence. Good evening, sir.
Good evening,
Good
good
evening,
evening.
How are you,
Good
sir?
evening. Yes, I saw you and
No, this is Balakrishnan.
Hi, good
Joined.
evening.
Namaste, sir. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Namaste, namaste.
Good evening, sir. This is Balakrishnan.
Good evening. Oh,
Alex,
Good
is in
evening,
Delhi.
sir.
Yeah?
You are in Delhi now?
I am in Delhi.
Good evening, sir. This is Balakrishnan.
Good evening.
Sir, could we begin, sir? I think.
No, you can go ahead.
Yes.
It's 5. So you can start.
Yes, sir.
Alex,
Good evening, sir.
Welcome everybody. A very good evening to all of you to this August gathering. Ullal Lakshmi Narayana Bhat, commonly referred to as Justice Bhat, over the past 4 decades was a revered figure in the Indian judiciary. He was celebrated for his profound understanding of laws and his compassionate application of the knowledge for the greater benefit of humanity. Justice Bhat was unwaveringly committed to the principles of justice and social equity. His passing occurred on Thursday, June 6th, at the age of 91. Justice Bhat, born in 1933 in Vizianagaram, Andhra Pradesh, pursued his legal education at Madras Law College, graduating in 1954. He was admitted to the bar as an advocate before the Madras High Court in 1955. He started practice under the guidance of B.S. Kakilaya, his brother-in-law, a respected figure in the legal profession. He was a member of the Undivided Communist Party of India and also the president of Kasaragod Panchayat. In 1961, he was chosen as a municip by the Kerala Public Service Commission, but due to political considerations, the government declined to appoint him. In 1968, the High Court of Kerala selected and recommended him to the position of District and Sessions Judge. He was officially appointed by the state government in 1970 and served in this role till 1980. In 1980, he assumed the position of a judge at the High Court of Kerala and later served as acting Chief Justice there from 1991. Subsequently, he was appointed as the Chief Justice of the Gowda High Court, where he served until December 1993. Following this, he was transferred to serve as the Chief Justice of High Court of Madhya Pradesh. Justice Bhat retired in October 1995. After retiring, he was appointed as the President of Customs, Excise and Gold Control Appellate Tribunal, SIGAT, New Delhi, where he served for next 3 years. Recognized for his legal acumen, he was designated as a senior advocate by the Supreme Court of India in 1999 and commenced practice before the High Court of Karnataka in Bangalore. Justice V.R. Krishna, in his foreword to Justice Bhatt's autobiography, said, I quote, he was shaped by his social milieu as a young person. He was of Andhra, of Karnataka, and ended up as a Kerala judge. His jurisprudence was not in the ambition to climb to the highest echelons, but social justice to every person of India. On top of this Everest wonder, he was socialist by conviction. His luminous book is a wonder because he has not minced matters, never praised to please, but stated only facts. This autobiography illuminates the soul. I pay tribute to him now that he is back at the bar. The bar also has to be independent. Unquote. He presided over cases in court number 3 at the historic Ram Mohan Palace in Ernakulam, where his exceptional ability to grasp the essence of each matter was evident. Despite his efficient handling of hearings, lawyers seldom left his court, feeling that their cases had not been thoroughly argued. I recall a particular instance during a hearing concerning a case under Section 304 of the IPC, where a defense lawyer argued, citing various authorities, that the subjective perception of witnesses regarding the speed of a vehicle could not definitively establish rash driving. The counsel pointed out that what one person might consider excessive speed, such as 60 kilometers per hour, another might deem moderate. Lower court's reliance solely on the witness testimony, as argued by the counsel, was not sufficient evidence of recklessness. At this point, Justice Bhatt directed the court officer to get the copy of the scene mahazar or Panchnama. It detailed that there were tire marks spanning approximately 10 meters and the lorry had collided with an electric post, causing it to break in two. before running over the unfortunate victim. This marked the conclusion of the discussion on recklessness, prompting the lawyer to swiftly shift focus to the sentencing phase of the proceedings. His courtroom provided a valuable learning experience for every lawyer present. His systematic approach in analyzing the facts and pertinent legal principles of each case was notable. Justice Butt would openly discuss the provisions of law and the factual intricacies of the case, making it accessible for even those lawyers not directly involved in the matter to comprehend. He was humorous and witty, always ready with clever retort. While not all of his jokes were light-hearted, he often had his more stinging and sarcastic remarks. He was always passionate about legal education, especially imparting knowledge, both practical and theoretical, to the members of the judiciary. Today, we have a very august gathering to remember Justice U.L. Butt. In 2020, I was in Bangalore at Justice Butt's residence. We were revising the NJA publication by Justice Butt on evaluation of evidence in criminal cases. Justice Butt read end to end the Constitution Bench decision in Selvi's case on testimonial compulsion in narco-analysis and said that it was one of the finest judgments on the subject. It was authored by Justice KG Balakrishnan, former Chief Justice of India, who is present here. In fact, Justice Balakrishnan had started as a judge, sitting along with Justice Butt. I formally invite your Lordship to address the gathering.
Remembering Justice C.L. Bhat is something for me. It is touching the heart of my life. It is not that I sat with Justice U.L. Bhat for a long time in Division Bench of Kerala High Court. I started my career as a judicial officer on 10/173 as a just judicial civil judge junior, the municipal trainee before Justice Bhat when he was a district judge at Trichy. Then he told me one thing, which I try to keep it in mind till throughout my judicial career. He said, Mr. Balakrishnan, people may win or lose case before you, your court, but nobody shall feel that they lost the case because this particular judge was presiding over the court. So I try to follow it, and the first guidelines given to me in the judicial career was Justice U.L. Bhat. I can never forget the guidance given by him to me. And for a long time, I was sitting with him in the division bench of the Kerala High Court, dealing with several criminal cases. At one point of time, and the officer came to us and told there are more than 2 years old criminal appeals are there in the courts. So then Justice Bhat directed to post all the cases which is more than 2 years old. And we continuously had the criminal appeals, or 302 appeals. That is with I directed the lawyer to give the facts and then argue on the point on what ground your client has been convicted. You concentrate on that argument, and with that we could dispose of large number of the entire arrears. We could eradicate the case. So many memorable events which I could remember on this day. And we had a very fine time in the Kerala High Court. I'm happy that Justice Thomas also is here to speak out his memories. He was transferred to, he became the Chief Justice of Assam. he became the Chief Justice of Madhya Pradesh. And I feel that he was at that time, the number of judges in the Supreme Court is very less. So unfortunately, he could not come to so. It is a loss to the Indian judiciary that he could not adorn the Supreme Court as a judge. We would have in the legal field, we would have very fine contributions from his side, from the Apex Court, had he been in the Supreme Court. So I feel these organizations have chosen these memorial event, which I feel I am thankful to them, and I would like to hear the rest of the speakers. Thank you very much for inviting this function.
Justice K.T. Thomas, just like Bhatt, was directly selected as Justice District and Session Judge, securing first rank in the selection test. You all know Honeybees of Solomon, Memories of a Jurist, is his celebrated autobiography where he has mentioned about Justice Bhatt and his interactions with Justice Bhatt as a district judge as well as a High Court judge. Sir, I formally invite you to say a few words.
Mr. Harindranath,
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
you became younger.
Sir.
Huh? Difficult for me earlier to recognize you. Now,
He is young, sir.
Justice KG Balakrishnan mentioned about the reason why Justice Bhatt was not elevated to the Supreme Court. It was more political than personal. He should have been elevated to the Supreme Court because when his junior was elevated, he was bypassed for no reason. Such a fantastic judge who lost. India lost. Our judiciary lost. Had he been elevated as a judge of the Supreme Court of India, we would have now been provided with very wonderful judgments by him. My acquaintance with Justice U.L. Bhatt started after I became a district judge. My first posting was at Bechu, where he preceded me for a short period, and then he was transferred to, if I remember correct, Trivandrum. The bar of Bechu was remembering him always, saying that we had a good, very fine judge called Lakshmi Narayana Bhatt. So I was eager to meet him. It so happened that Judicial Officers Association meeting was held in the High Court, Ram Mohan Palace once. I too attended, he also attended. Then we met personally each other, and then I understood not only the capacity, but vocabulary and his erudition. And during his talk, when I was transferred as district judge of Calicut, he preceded me, and therefore I was helped by him to get a house. The officers' quarters was not available at that time. So the house where he resided as a district judge, he prevailed upon the landlord to give it to me, and therefore I started my career as a district judge of Calicut, occupying the very same house where he started. The bar used to tell about him in Calicut in very high terms. No wonder. But once he came to the High Court, I think if I remember correct, he became a judge of the High Court in September 1980. I became a High Court judge in August 1985. So there is a gap of 5 years. After I reached the High Court, we had the opportunity to sit together in a division bench for not for one term, for multiple terms we sat together, hearing not only criminal cases, very rarely we heard criminal cases, but mostly miscellaneous appeals. And we had somehow say that an approach with the same approach of the constitutional philosophy. I remember one personal episode. On the death of his daughter, Savida, he had to keep away from the High Court for 1 or 2 months because the family went to Bangalore for obsequies and other ceremonies. Afterwards, when he joined back, Chief Justice Malimath thought that he shall not bear a heavy burden and therefore put him in as a single judge. But he went to Malimath and told him that I will be happier if I am posted with Justice Thomas. And it was a surprise to me that after he came back from such a very great tragedy, he could function as a normal person. Later, he told me that he himself went to the later Justice Malimath told me that the reason for putting me with him is his own request. When I read his book, The Story of a Chief Justice, he mentioned this aspect particularly. After he was transferred to Guwahati as a Chief Justice, I heard from many judges of Guwahati, because it was a very large High Court, with 7 states attached to jurisdiction. Many judges told me thereafter, because great improvements have been made on account of his administrative ability and talent. When I was district judge of Koilon, the administrative charge of Koilon district was given to Justice Bhat for a short period. Then I learned how the administration could be carried out very efficiently if homework can be made. Thereafter, Justice Bhat went the largest state territory-wise in Madhya Pradesh. I think Jabalpur was the headquarters. Yes. I missed the chance to visit him at Jabalpur, but many judges, both the district judges and the High Court judges, told me that a confused administrative system in Jabalpur had been rectified on account of the great ability of Chief Justice Bhat, who oversaw that it must be done. We lost such a wonderful judge, both judicially and administratively. After retirement, he settled down in Bangalore and I settled down in Kottayam, but telephone became an instrument through which we could continue our contact frequently, very, very frequently, but gradually it stopped because I knew that health-wise it became difficult for him to talk long. And it was very sorry that it was Justice Basant who informed me one morning that Justice Bhat passed away. And I'm extremely thankful to Mr. Rashid, who took the initiative to organize this function in remembrance of that great judge. Let his memory influence us and the future judges for creating our judicial system a dynamic instrument. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Justice Ravindra Bhat is a native of Swarga village in Manjeshwar. He is here. He was educated in Bangalore and Gwalior. He is Swarga village in Manjeshwar is next to Ullad, from where Justice Bhat hails. I request Justice Ravindra Bhat to address this gathering. Sir.
Good evening to all the distinguished gathering. Good evening, Chief Justice Balakrishnan, Justice Thomas. I can see my friend Mr. Basant, Justice Basant. And I'm told a lot of others are here eager to speak. It is a wonderful event. It's a great gesture on the part of Rashid to have organized this event in the memory of Justice UL Bhat, one of the great luminaries of our legal world. There are people in this legal world whose luminousness shines regardless of the positions they occupied. This segment is occupied by a niche of the finest judges of the country, and many of them were not appointed to the Supreme Court. In this pantheon of judges, we have the likes of Chagla, Rajamannar, Pense, Justice Nair, G.P. Singh, G.S. Sandavalia, who was a Chief Justice also for 9 or 10 years, and also UL Bhat. In his book, The Story of a Chief Justice, the author, Justice Bhat, does mention about what transpired between him and the then Chief Justice of India, and why he was told, the reasons he was told that he would not make it or be appointed. My knowledge or my acquaintanceship with Justice Bhat was rather late, in the sense that though we hailed from neighboring village, he came from the neighborhood and belonged to the same district. Rather, he was in Ullal. My district now falls in Kasaragod, and my Tharawad is in Kasaragod. And yet he appeared to know my family, but I had not known him. I had no acquaintance with him till after he retired. Till after he retired, and therefore, when he did retire, I went and met him in Bangalore, and he also desired that I should meet.
കറകറാന്നൊരു ശബ്ദം കേൾക്കുന്നവര്, അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഞാൻ ഇതിന് പോയി ഫോണിലേക്ക് പോയത്. സൗണ്ട്
Request him to mute, Hari.
നോക്കട്ടെ, വേറെ അവരുടെ ആപ്പിളിന്റെ തന്നെ ഒരു ഇതുണ്ട്, ഇയർഫോൺ.
Yes, I will go on. Yes, somebody can request Mr. Nair to mute himself. Therefore, I went and met him in Bangalore when he was there. And in his book, he recollects me. But in this book, he recollects me and the role that I played, but I think it's a mistake because, well, that's a small point. But when speaking of Justice Bhat, I think he contributed not just when he was on the bench, but also off the bench after he retired. Normally, people take up arbitration work. Justice Bhat appears to have had a very robust practice in Bangalore, and also probably gave advisory and opinions to on legal issues. But more importantly, he is a beacon to successive generations of lawyers and judges, because he made it a point, and he was untiring in his efforts to ramp up judicial education. So from the several colleagues across the country who became judges, or who were my colleagues in the Supreme Court, I learned that he used to frequently go to judicial academies in Guwahati. It's a fact that he used to visit the Karnataka Judicial Academy. So in terms of contribution, it has been immense. And in both the Jabalpur in the Madhya Pradesh High Court, as well as in Guwahati, he was known for his efficiency. And he told me once a very interesting I mean, for me, it's very kind of emotional. In my career, I had a little setback in the sense that sometime in January, I was overlooked for appointment to the Supreme Court. So he called up a few weeks later and then said that you have a very good reputation. I don't think you should be despairing. Things will work out for you. And he gave me a general pep talk, as they say. And a couple of weeks later, I received a call from the Chief Justice saying that I would be appointed as a judge of the Chief Justice of the Rajasthan High Court. And a few months later, the announcement was made for my appointment as a judge of the Supreme Court. For me, it's a matter, something which memory which I would always cherish. That around that time he called up. He had my number, which I think Mr. Rashid must have given him. So he called me up on my cell phone and said, I had a conversation and wished me all the best. And told me at the end of the conversation, so what if one Bhat couldn't make it? Another Bhat is making it to the Supreme Court. So it was very touching on his part. Likewise, he was very supportive when I wrote the judgment, saying that the Office of the Chief Justice of India is accountable to the Right to Information Act. I would only say that his analytical acumen is exceptional and his writing precise and clear. I would say that, and his judgments, I've read a few of his judgments. They were extremely balanced and erudite. In Madhya Pradesh, I came across some of his judgments from the Madhya Pradesh High Court on various aspects, which included National Security Act, that is preventive detention, or even taxation. A very interesting field on subject on entry tax was the Local Entry Tax Act had slapped a mandatory penalty of 10 times the value, 10 times the tax. So he said this is not proportionate, far before the doctrine of proportionality was actually propounded in the Supreme Court, and said that this is actually confiscatory. And he struck it down. This is Western Coalfields versus State of MP. And likewise, there are several other judgments, and I don't think we have enough time. I'm sure that all of you at some stage in life or the other will come across the judgments, particularly in Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, and Guwahati. And he also, after my appointment as Chief Justice of Rajasthan, gave me some very good advice, which I valued and I tried to implement. It was at his inspiration and that of another colleague of mine who became a Chief Justice of Kashmir at that time, that I made it a point to visit as many districts as I could. So during the vacation, I visited something like 15 districts of Rajasthan, which is a fairly far-flung, the largest state in the country. And that really gave me a grip of the problems faced by judicial officers, the problems faced by the bar and litigants, and sensitized me, which enabled me to talk to my colleagues and try to better the situation. So today we are gathered here in his memory, and I am grateful to Rashid, the organizer, who has enabled all of us to be here. Not only his well-wishers, but admirers. And I condole with the family, and I would, in the end, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Justice Gopala Gowda also shares Justice Bhatt's passion for social justice. In fact, Justice Bhatt had told me that after starting practice in the Bangalore High Court, he had appeared before Justice Gopala Gowda several times. I met Justice Gopala Gowda two days before, and I told him about this function. So he was very eager to participate. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming here. You have to unmute, sir.
Are you?
Yes,
Am
sir.
I audible? No,
Yes,
audible?
you're audible, sir.
My elder brother, Justice K.P. Thomas, Justice KG Balakrishnan, Justice Basant, Justice Ravindra Bhat, and other brother judges, Justice K.M. Joseph, and other brother judges who have participated in this remembering UL Bhat function. I'm very sad to learn that UL Bhat, a great judge of this country, is no more. He had erudite first principles, he had very good knowledge, great administrator, great thinker. He had a statesman quality. He has got strong ideological conviction. That's why he has followed the path of rendering social justice the preamble of the Constitution of India, to render social justice to the people of this great country. Does not matter, he was not elevated for varieties of reasons to the apex court. He was eligible in all aspects. Nonetheless, as a district judge, as a constitutional judge of Kerala High Court, Chief Justice of 2 High Courts, he has proved that he is a great judge of this great country. Of course, rightly, Justice K.T. Thomas pointed out, not because the vacancies were not there in the Supreme Court. He has rightly pointed out, the junior most person was elevated, he has been ignored. It is a sad state of affairs in the Indian judiciary. These things are happening. That has happened to Justice Bhat. It is not lost to him. It is lost to the people of this country. Great judges have been ignored, not elevated to the Supreme Court, made them to function and render justice. The independence of judiciary, we have got our own problems, which we cannot talk now today in this function. He has got the great ideological conviction. My view is, because of this ideological conviction, political ideological conviction, made him to understand the societal problems correctly and applied the constitutional ideals in rendering justice to the people of the country. He was a great judge. After demitting his office, he became a senior counsel practice in various high courts. He used to appear before my bench. His understanding of law, his presentation, and taking the judges along with him to follow his submissions made the judges to render justice to the people of the country. His contribution is tremendous to the Indian judiciary. His teaching, he has got the fascination to teach and educate the young lawyers, the judicial officers, not only the district judicial officers, even the high court judges. He has conducted number of classes. Hours together at that age, that ailment, he used to take class from morning till evening every day when he was free. That is his commitment. Commitment to the cause, commitment to the judiciary, commitment to the people of this country. That is the nature of this person. as rightly Ravindra Bhat said, he is humorous, witty, and he is very straightforward. Whenever the judges put wrong questions, he used to answer them properly. That is just the quality. He never minced words. He used to tell what he wanted to tell, either to the lawyers or to the judges. That is a great, courageous person, which must have been deprived. His judgeship to the Supreme Court does not matter. We have all assembled through this virtual meeting. We must pay our rich tributes to the great soul. His contribution may not be from the Supreme Court, but his contribution and evolution of law in all jurisprudences, criminal jurisprudence, constitutional jurisprudence, service jurisprudence, civil jurisprudence is great. That will be useful for our generation. Some judges may not follow the precedent. They have got their own ideas. I have got something to say in a separate forum. Contemptuous attitude. That is because their perceptions. They don't like some person, some ideology. That is not the question which we are required to answer now. Anyway, I must be thankful to Ravindra Bhat having informed me, requested me to participate. I am very happy our great personalities have gathered today to remember a great soul. We all pay rich tributes to him, and I only appeal to the young lawyers, young judicial officers, even including the constitutional functionaries. We must follow what he has left to us to carry forward, to render justice to the people of this country. Thank you very much, Mr. Ravindra Bhat, having informed me and invited me for this remembering meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Justice K.M. Joseph practiced as an advocate before the High Court of Kerala, before becoming a judge of the High Court of Kerala. He had appeared in several matters before Justice Bhat, and he also would have memories about Justice Bhatt's, his interactions with Justice Bhat as a lawyer and later as a judge. Sir, I invite you to address this gathering.
Thank you, Arun. At the outset, I would like to thank Live Law, in particular Advocate Rashid, for organizing this virtual function, as this is in the fitness of things that we remember one of the true stars of the Indian legal firmament. Justice Bhat, then acting Chief Justice of the High Court of Kerala, in his reply speech on the occasion of his being appointed as the Chief Justice of the Guwahati High Court in 1991, declared, and I quote, "I am Andhra-born, Tulu-speaking Kannadiya Keralite, who set up practice in the erstwhile Madras state and ultimately spent the worthwhile part of my life in the Kerala state and going to a group of states in the Northeast," unquote. He practiced in the civil side, in the courts in Kasaragod. He had a successful practice. Being also an ardent follower of the communist cause and committed to society, he had a distinguished service as the president of a local panchayat and thereafter as chairman of the municipality. He served as a district and sessions judge for more than a decade. He not only quickly assimilated criminal law, despite not having practiced in the criminal side, but he went on to become a complete master of criminal law. A judge of the High Court of Kerala for nearly 11 years, he has left a huge body of lucid and brilliant judgments, not only in civil and criminal law, but almost all branches of law. He was scholarly, but he did not abandon his common sense. Nor did he turn deaf to the voice of justice. He exhibited extraordinary energy, and his court exuded a uniquely vibrant atmosphere His mastery over the English language led to judgments which were not only lucid expositions of the principles in various branches of law, but were not prolix or obtruse. I had the good fortune of appearing before him. The experience was, to put it mildly, challenging as much as it was exciting. That was because he would always be thoroughly prepared. The lawyers had to be on their toes all the time. There was a great deal of humor which bordered on mild but justified sarcasm. He was kind at heart, but his analytical skills and erudition were never shadowed by his liberal spirit. He wanted to elevate his court to the most sublime level so that justice was administered. I quote Justice Bhat again on the occasion, very same occasion, when he was appointed, when his reply speech, he said, and I quote, "I am quite conscious of the many faults I have, one of which has been repeatedly brought to my notice by my friends among the members of the bar, namely impatience in the court. I plead guilty," characteristic of him. My only explanation, if it could be so called, is whenever I had shown impatience with relevant reasons, or on account of it, or from a sense of perversity, but only for the purpose of getting at the facts correctly and in the shortest possible time to enable me to arrive at a correct decision in the case. I am also quite conscious that in the process I have ruffled many feathers, but it is my feeling, though it is for you to judge, that on all those occasions I have been able to discharge my final duty of decision-making fairly and with a high degree of objectivity. I am the trait which I particularly remember about him was his ability to keep the windows of his mind fully open and never allow irrelevant aspects to overwhelm his decision-making process. He was free from bias, except perhaps for his proclivity to be fully just. His court was a safe court, where justice in the sense of rendering to all what is due in law was never a casualty. He was in fact patient, particularly with the junior members of the bar. He was progressive, not unnaturally, having regard to his innings in political and public service. All of us know the invaluable service that he has rendered in the field of judicial training. He continued with this passion even after retirement by enlightening the members of the Karnataka Judicial Service. He has left behind 3 publications, one of which is a relevancy, proof, and evaluation of evidence in criminal cases. I think the assistance of Harindranath also establishes his well-acknowledged mastery over the law of evidence, particularly in the field of criminal law. He has also opened up his heart and mind about his legendary life in his work, The Story of a Chief Justice. It is worthwhile to recall what Justice V.R.P. Krishna has said about him in the foreword which he wrote for the book. And I quote, "But it's bold, brilliant, and original. He lost," again I quote, "he lost his appointment to the Supreme Court because he was irreverent and not obsequious to seniors," unquote. Again, I quote. I might assert that he gave the people of the 9 backward states, that is because Guwahati, as you know, caters to 7, I quote, and then Madhya Pradesh and Kerala, access to economical justice worthy of a socialist, secular, and democratic world, unquote. Need I parade more further words or shower greater praise? Justice Bhat was and will remain a true legend and a unique colossus. Justice Bhat is synonymous with unquestionable greatness and nobility, both as a judge and as a human being. May his soul rest in peace. And thank you once again for the organizers.
Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, please.
Mr. Vivek Tankha, Rajya Sabha MP and senior advocate in the Supreme Court is before us. In fact, he had appeared before Justice Bhat many a times when he was in the Madhya Pradesh High Court. Shall I, sir, ask you to share your...
Thank you, Rashid ji. I'm so grateful that you asked me to join. I have very vivid memories of Justice Bhat. I only knew him when he was in Madhya Pradesh. And that was a period between, I think, 93 to 95. He came at a time when the Madhya Pradesh High Court was facing its biggest crisis of credibility. And I remember just the Supreme Court judges, Justice Verma and others telling us, we're sending you a very strong Chief Justice who's going to set things right in Madhya Pradesh. And believe me, when he reached Madhya Pradesh, he was very friendly. He was very, very accessible. The bar could talk to him. It was not difficult convincing him, but he was very firm. And from that point, he took over Madhya Pradesh High Court, I remember. Virtually rebuilt it in a sense. And I remember how he brought discipline. Court timings were adhered to. And I saw a very rare blend in him. He was a good administrator and also a wonderful judge. The two things generally don't come together. But he had both the qualities with him at that. He is the one who started a lot of building activity in Madhya Pradesh High Court, which was later on continued by Justice Mathur, who succeeded him. But also with that, he came out with some excellent judgments. And I used to find him a replica of Justice G.P. Singh. You know, Justice G.P. Singh was one of our finest judges in Madhya Pradesh. And for juniors, you had to be very well prepared to be in his court. And I was a counsel with 2 years or 3 years of practice, and all of us used to appear in justice before Justice G.P. Singh. I used to find him a replica. He used to give juniors an opportunity to speak. And he would even behave as if he doesn't know the law. So he's wanting you to tell him the law. So I still recollect, I had a fairly 10, 12 years of practice by that time. I was arguing a very touchy matter, that is the provision which denied anticipatory bail in under the... Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Yes.
I said there was a provision which had recently come and in the Atrocities Act which said there will be no anticipatory bail under the Atrocities Act. And we had challenged that provision on behalf of different people who were impacted. He heard me for 2-3 days, I remember. And then he judged it from all kinds of angles. Like, for instance, he says which are the people who've come to this court. He saw there was a Hindu, there was also a Muslim, there was also a Christian, there was also, different people. So his judgment making or his judgment formation was very unique. It's a unique blend of how his experience of public at large and the communities, he would blend with his legal finesse. And he struck down that provision, in fact. He struck down the provision of denial of anticipatory bail under this new law. Of course, somebody went to Supreme Court and Supreme Court set aside that judgment and that provision was restored. But I still feel that there was a human touch in that person. He was also looking for talent. He was also looking for a good bar. He respected the bar. And I still remember that case of proportionality of taxation, which I was one of the persons who argued that matter before him on behalf of one of the parties. The way he would try to judge a cause and try to find a wire media of what would be good for the people. Excellent way of judging and deciding causes. And lastly, I must tell you, I was a very young counsel when he retired. He retired, I think, on 10/10/95. On that day in the morning, early morning, I had no contact with him beyond the court. I was a regular practitioner before him because I was one of the leading counsels in his court, at the Constitutional Court. I got a call at 6:30 in the morning, and somebody on the line said, Tankha, I'm Bhat speaking. No, I didn't know which Bhat is going to call me at 6:30 in the morning. So without knowing who it was, I said, which Bhat? He says, oh, I'm UL Bhat, your Chief Justice. So I immediately sort of was taken by surprise. I was half asleep. I said, sir, I'm sorry. I didn't even, I could never even think or conceive that you would call me at 6:30 in the morning. He said, yes, I called you today because I'm retiring and leaving today. But I only called to tell you that I was very fond of your arguments. You were very logical and used to present your case well. And since I'm leaving today and you are still very young, I've discussed this matter with Justice Mathur, and we are going to ask you to join the bench very soon. That's another story that I didn't want to be a judge because I'd seen my father as a judge. And I thought this to become a judge is like accepting something like a penance. So that's another story. But he is the gentleman who spoke to me at 6:30 in the morning on 10/10/1995. And then he left Jabalpur the same evening. I can only say that our High Court remembers him even today. He will never be forgotten in our High Court. You talk to people of that time, whether it be the politicians or the judges or the lawyers of that time, everybody will have a good word for him. I remember when I tweeted on his death, one person who called me was the then Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. And I think he also retweeted on my tweet, Mr. Digvijay Singh. I agree with every word that Vivek has said for Justice Bhat. So I'm only paying my homage and a tribute to a great person, a great soul. Yes, you're right. He felt denied that he had a claim to be elevated to the highest court of India. But that's somebody's fate and fortune, which we can't predicate. So I am happy that I joined all of you, and such illustrious gathering of senior judges. I've appeared before most of the judges who are here, and each one of them has excelled in his own rights. And so I'm so grateful that you asked me to come and join. Thank you so much, sir, and our homage to Justice Bhatt's family.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Justice Anu Sivaraman is now a judge of the Karnataka High Court. She was initially appointed as an additional judge of the Kerala High Court in 2015. She, on her own accord, sought a transfer out of the state of Kerala. In fact, lawyers in Kerala feel that it is a great loss for the Kerala High Court. But I am sure that she has now become a great gain for the Karnataka High Court. I invite you, madam, to speak a few words on Justice Bhatt.
My pranams to the esteemed participants of this evening's commemoration. Thank you to Live Law, the organizers of this function, for giving me an opportunity. I am aware that it is because of the close friendship that was shared by Justice UL Bhatt with my father and the resultant relationship that the families had that I have been invited to speak a few words today about Justice UL Bhatt. I will try not to venture into his early life or his life as a member of the district judiciary, of which I have no direct knowledge. My memories of Justice Bhatt start from the early 1980s. I have had the good fortune of knowing him as a good friend of my father, and therefore as a friend of the family as well. I have had the chance to know his family and to see him as an affectionate person who always treated me with the utmost warmth and affection. I've also had the opportunity of briefly appearing before him when he was a a judge in the Kerala High Court. But the stories I've heard about him and of his wit in court are innumerous. I've heard from authoritative sources that on being told by a junior of my father, who was then a lawyer practicing in the Kerala High Court, that Mr. Shivram Nair is on his legs in another court, he immediately retorted, "Tell him that I'm on another part of my anatomy here." That was Justice UL Bhatt. I remember just how inconsolable he was at the news of my father's passing. And I also remember with unending gratitude the affection that he showered on me thereafter. He treated me as a member of his own family. He used to call me to speak to me so that I would not feel left alone. What was surprising to me was how inclusive and with what ease he used to speak to me. He used to treat me as an equal, which was hardly ever the case. However, Justice UL Bhatt was one of the finest judges that Kerala has ever produced. He will always be remembered for the committed and upright person he was. He will remain in my memory as an affectionate member of the past generation of judges who are the beacons in our path. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you. Thank you to the organizers.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. In fact, Justice Bechu Kurian Thomas is here. He is presently a serving judge of the High Court of Kerala. He had several interactions with Justice, but especially I remember regarding a question of law, which was a controversial matter in his book, which on that point, Justice Bechu Kurian Thomas had argued before the division bench. I, sir, invite you to share your thoughts on Justice Bhatt.
Thank you, Mr. B.J. Hadindranath. Distinguished guests, I thank Live Law and Rashid for inviting me for this function, especially since it is a commemorative session on Justice Bhatt. My perspective about Justice Bhatt probably starts from my days as a school student, much earlier in terms of age than all of you. The name UL Bhatt became familiar to me when I was just 10 years old. My father was appointed as a judge of the district judge of Calicut, and we moved into the same house that was occupied by Justice Bhatt. He was the erstwhile district judge of Calicut. From then on, his name used to crop up quite often during our family conversations. However, it was only in 1985 when my father was elevated as a judge of the High Court of Kerala at the swearing-in ceremony in the 7th court hall of the Ramohan Palace, Kerala High Court, that I first had a glimpse of Justice Bhatt. A handsome judge with a magnetic personality. This was my first impression about him. Though our families have traveled together occasionally during holidays, the interaction with him in those days was quite minimal. Perhaps I was awestruck with his personality that I dared not venture to interact with him. But in 1989, we were in those days almost neighbors, just the Chief Justice's house separating our houses. In 1989, when an organization in which I was a member wanted to invite a judge for inaugurating a function, the first name that came to my mind was the impressive personality of Justice Bhatt. With the little acquaintance I had, and with the belief of long-standing friendship with my father, I went and invited Justice Bhatt. I was disappointed because he denied he refused to attend the function for reasons which I later realized was substantial. The first thing he wanted to know from my friends who was also there with us to invite him, when we went to invite him, asked was, with whom am I sharing the days with? Now I realize as a judge, whenever I'm invited to attend a function, what Justice spoke of then reminds me every time. A judge should be sharing the dais with persons who should be known to him and who cannot have any credibility which is of doubt. Thereafter, my acquaintance with Justice Bhat was very, very rare. However, from 2014 onwards, Justice Bhat started conversing with me regularly. As a lawyer of more than almost 2 decades of practice, I was reasonably busy, but I used to get a call at least once in 2 weeks, somewhere around 9:15 in the morning. I did not dare to tell him that I need to leave for court. I continued the conversation. It used to last at least 45 minutes to 1 hour. Despite my inkling to go to court, the conversations it was a pleasure listening to him. And his humorous anecdotes and stories used to enthrall me despite my schedule. While I was practicing as a lawyer in one of his visits to Ernakulam, on my request, he joined my family and came home and spent the time with us and had a meal, which was really enjoyable, the time that we spent together. His exceptional legal acumen was displayed when he came to the High Court after his retirement for a session on the Indian Evidence Act. His explanation about how witnesses perceive factual situations can never be forgotten. I dare not reproduce that for the sheer fear of failure in expressing what he had explained to us. Justice Bhat, as I know him, was a highly independent person with a creative and an analytical brain, as Justice Ravindra Bhat put it. He was a judge with a great deal of clairvoyance, and his nonchalant approach was quite often deceptive of his real personality. The asperity of his comments, as is often said, denied him a certain elevation to the Supreme Court, an irreparable loss for not only for the legal fraternity, but for the growth of jurisprudence in the country. He, as he had put it once, was outspoken because he was the same outside as he was inside. Babu and Suraj, I used to have conversations with them quite often in the evenings at times when we bump into each other. After the information was conveyed that Justice Bhat had departed, I spoke to Babu and Suraj, conveyed deep reverence for the departed soul. And to this august gathering, I bow my head in reverence to the great and noble soul and pray that his family has the strength to overcome the loss. Thank you. Thank you, Lifelong. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. In fact, I would invite Justice Balakrishnan Nair, sir. He was actually to deliver the welcome address, but for some technical glitch, I could not locate. Sorry, sir. Please say a few words on your memories. Yes. Sir, please unmute. You're not audible. Please unmute, sir. Please unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now you are audible.
It is okay. Sorry, my system failed me for some time at the crucial moment. So anyway, function has started off in a very good and cordial environment, and we had wonderful personalities to speak on the occasion. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. See, I would like to say a few words about my experience as a lawyer who practiced before Justice Bhat. Justice Bhat was a great judge, uncompromising in his principles. He was very learned and erudite judge. At that time, young lawyers like me were quite comfortable in his court. If the case is good, there is no question of losing it before Justice Bhat, irrespective of the personalities involved or the counsel appeared. He always held the balance even and administered justice without fear or favor, affection or ill will. Even if a counsel provoked or irritated him, the same never affected the final outcome. The party was never punished by him for the misconduct of the counsel or the party. It was the safest court for a good case, irrespective of whether the counsel is good or bad. I and several of my contemporaries at the bar, who were juniors at that time, fondly remember his patient hearing and encouraging words, which stood us in good stead those days. Though he was a service judge, elevated to higher judicial service, he handled writ petitions in a way better than many judges from the bar. Generally, judges from the service found it difficult to handle writ petitions as they had no previous practice in the High Court. There are exceptions to this notion also. Justice Bhat was, as I said earlier, one judge where a good cause was never lost. Even after his retirement, he was in touch with me and many others in Kerala. He always remained a great well-wisher of mine, and I remember it with gratitude. Though he was a great judge, he was not elevated to the Supreme Court. He is described as the first martyr of the collegium system. He missed the chance, not because of any fault of his. He was very strict in selecting judges for appointment to the courts where he was the Chief Justice. He refused to comply with the suggestions to elevate unsuitable persons, and he stood his ground even in the face of great pressure from those who could influence his elevation. Normally, his adherence to principles should have been a plus point for his elevation to great minds, but for small men, it was a disqualification. He was overlooked for the alleged irreverence shown by him to the members of the collegium. Regardless of whether he sat on the bench of Supreme Court or not, for us, he was a great judge who conquered the hearts of hundreds of the members of the bar and most of his colleagues on the bench. It was he who started training for judicial officers in Kerala. The director of training, established at his instance in Kerala, was a forerunner of the State Judicial Academy. Following the example of Kerala, training for judicial officers was started in other states and also at the national level. And for that, State Judicial Academies and National Judicial Academy were established. He was rated as one of the best trainers in the judicial academies. Apart from his autobiography, he has also penned 3 books on Indian Evidence Act. They bear true testimony to his erudition and sharp intellect. I bow my head before his memory. I offer my respects. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your words. Justice Satish Chandran was a judge of the Kerala High Court He had an eventful 22-year-long career as a judge, initially as a district and session judge, and later as a judge of the High Court. He was also the Registrar General of the Kerala High Court. Sir, I request you to share your memories about Justice Bhat.
Thank you, Mr. Harindranath. Good evening to all distinguished guests. Let me first of all express my sincere gratitude to the organizer of this meeting, notably Mr. Rashid, and for providing me an opportunity to speak my feelings in remembrance of Justice Bhat. I never had the fortune to practice before him, because by the time I commenced practice in Trivandrum courts, he had already left the station. In fact, nearly a decade ago. However, from the first day of my practice, I could hear stories of Justice Bhat, his court management, his witty anecdotes, and how he appreciated and promoted the juniors of the bar. Some of the juniors in that bar excelled, and in fact, they could compete with any senior at the bar. They were branded under a common epithet, products of UL Bhat, as he then was. Because whenever a junior appeared before him seeking an adjournment, he insisted, it was said, that the next hearing, the junior should prepare the case and argue the case. He would extend all assistance to enable the junior to present the case. Notably, it was said it annoyed some senior lawyers. However, he continued to inspire the juniors and insisted for addressing arguments before his court. Some of the juniors in that bar, as I already told, excelled, and one among them later became a judge of the High Court, Justice Nair. My association with Justice Bhat was much at a later point of time, only after I became a judge of the High Court. In fact, it was more or less telephonic conversation, which extended sometimes more than an hour. I was an avid listener, and as a blotting paper, soaking wet water, I would hear his wisdom shared with me. However, as his health conditions deteriorated, such talks also diminished. Whenever I had the opportunity to go to Bangalore, I visited him on 2 or 3 occasions. And each time, I was moved by his humility rather than various other qualities which he had. And once he would state that compared with Justice V.R. Krishna, we all are dwarfs. That is, we would come only up to his waist. He recognized the merit of even the raw junior and also appreciated him and inspired them to become good lawyers. He knew perfectly well the continuation of the legacy of this noble profession rested with the junior members of the bar. He was denied elevation to the Supreme Court. In fact, was not a personal loss, but a loss to the Indian judiciary. As commented by many of the speakers, he would have contributed much to the judicial system if he had been elevated to the Supreme Court. Still, his name would continue to be written in golden letters, and his memory as a great judge would remain uneffaced. I pay my respectful homage to the venerable soul. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So now, Justice Rakesh Chandra Sharma was Registrar General of the High Court of Madhya Pradesh when Justice Bhat was the Chief Justice. He was later elevated as a judge of the High Court of Madhya Pradesh. Now he's practicing as a senior lawyer in the Supreme Court of India. Thank you, sir. I would.
I am Rakesh Chandra Mishra, R.C. Mishra.
I'm sorry, Rakesh Chandra Mishra.
While expressing my gratitude to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to join this August gathering, I would like to concentrate on his administrative capabilities, which were unprecedented, and we have not seen such a bold and outspoken administrator who had the ability to take work from each and every subordinate. Although he had to suffer for all this, because in the process, some were very much annoyed with him. For example, I am giving what he has done first. Number one, he controlled the time of condolence. What was happening in my High Court? If a lawyer dies, there will be condolence at 11. He said, nothing doing, no condolence before 2:30. There was a strike organized by the lawyers, but he did not surrender, and ultimately he passed a resolution. He got a resolution passed by the full court that there will be no disruption of work in case of death of a lawyer or a member of fraternity before 2:30. So this was first system, which sort of resistance he had to face. Second thing, he restrained the judges, High Court judges, to go on tour for inspection or any other work on working days. Very bold step here. The third thing which he did, that he usurped the authority with the consent of all the judges. So what was he doing? He was passing a resolution was passed. Normally it is to be signed by the junior most, but he was signing first, and then the all 7 members or 5 members, they were signing that particular note. So this was the command, this was the authority he had gathered due to his administrative capabilities, his fairness, his transparency. This nobody could have done it. The High Court was in a turmoil. When he came, what was the situation? His predecessor's powers were withdrawn by the Supreme Court, and a committee of 7 judges was constituted to administer the High Court. Then the other thing he took into account was large number of PILs. What he did, he passed an order that all the PILs shall be heard at the main seat. Then he assigned that work to me to examine all the PILs and to point out which of the PIL has some substance. This again resulted in an effective control over the pendency that was rising. Most important thing which normally Chief Justice does not do was to call me at the end of every day at about 7. Misra, why this bench is not functioning? Why there is less disposal? Every day, who even the district judge cannot monitor this. As a Chief Justice, he was monitoring the entire High Court. So, control on institution, then control on the disposal. If a particular bench was not functioning properly, he was changing the roster unhesitatingly, and in the process, most of the judges who were what we call deprived of that particular roster were a little bit annoyed. I recall one incident. There was a judge who the senior was sitting quiet, hearing the argument. The junior judge said, yes, bill granted. I was not knowing. Next day in the morning at about 8:30 or 9, between 8:30 and 9, there was a call from, he was calling me directly. No PS, no PS business, direct. Misra, you have to throw him out. Oh, whom I have to throw? That fellow has done this. So you give him only old civil appeals and change the roster and see that so long he is there, no other work is allotted. No other type of work is allotted. This was what somebody says, he was very impatient. He did not tolerate any nonsense, any unfairness in the administration of justice. Then another thing which was unprecedented was that judges were sitting over the judgment. They were not delivering the judgment even after 1 year. Cases are pending for judgment after hearing. So then he called me to prepare a list. How many cases are pending for judgment? So it is very difficult. It will definitely cause annoyance to the judges. No. You do not talk to the judges. You just ask the reader to give the list, to provide the list. I did that. Then in his, as we all know, this his art of expression. He will call the judge. Oh, mister, how are you? How are you? Everything all right? Further, then why this case is pending? Either you decide it or release it. So this, who does it? Who has this courage? Or particularly, I will say, who will land himself in trouble by asking the judges, oh, you will decide it early or not. This was how he controlled the functioning of the High Court. Then in the district court area, first he established the training institute. Then he traveled throughout the state of Madhya Pradesh, which comprised Chhattisgarh at that time. You can imagine the extent of the entourage. Then he asked how many cases are stayed for more than 6 months. Called the list, got them listed, decide. A list before me. How many cases are more than 6 are stayed for a period of more than 6 months? Then he, after seeing the after visiting every district, he saw to it that all the problems, whether it is of building or what you call infrastructure or the number of judges, is sorted out. So this law secretary, Mr. M.K. Jain was there. He was asked that you see that this particular district is provided all the facilities, all the infrastructure, and the number of judges must be increased, and there should be a recruitment for that purpose. So this was the particular zeal to bring about the desired change in the administrative justice in the state of Madhya Pradesh. We have not seen such a great human being, because he was very kind-hearted. Because in the first place, he will, oh, he's a very tough administrator. He was a very tough administrator. At the same time, he was very kind-hearted, and he had a great contribution not only to the High Court of Madhya Pradesh, but to the field of administration of justice as a whole. Because after retirement also, he was practicing before in the High Court of Bangalore. And we, as his disciples, are trying to continue his heritage. I express my heartfelt condolence to the departed soul. May God rest him. Thank you. Thank you for it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for participating in this function. I'm sorry for misspelling your name once more, sir.
Oh,
Very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Highly honored.
Now, Justice Krishna Bhat, in fact, he was I also had long interaction with Justice Krishna Bhat. He was the Registrar General of the High Court of Karnataka, Director of the Karnataka Judicial Academy in Bangalore. In fact, at the time of editing his book, revising Justice Bhatt's book, Justice Krishna Bhat used to provide me a car to go to HSR layout, which is about 1 hour drive from the Karnataka Academy. And the whole day the car would be there. I would come back. Now he must have a lot of memories about Justice Bhatt.
May I interrupt for a moment?
Yes, sir.
May I interrupt for the moment? The book, The Appreciation of Evidence,
yes, sir,
was not published by me through the NA. Initially, it was edited by
Yes, sir.
Appreciation of Evidence. It is a small booklet for the judges.
Yes,
So
sir.
you will find my name in this preface of it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
That is how.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, so I invite Justice Krishna Bhat to address the sir. Please unmute, sir. You are not audible. You have to sir, you have to unmute. It is not, you're not audible. So in the Zoom, on the left-hand side, you will get so on the down bottom, you would find an icon, sir, of mic. You just, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now you are audible.
Thank you. As I used to address you, Mr. Hari, very dear friend of mine, and Rashi primarily for organizing this, I would rather say to celebrate the life of Justice V.L. Bhat. Most of you have seen him either as a judge, as a colleague, that is, while he was holding his official powers. My real physical connection, intellectual connection started with him when he was not having any position of power, but he had something even greater, the moral authority. We were, he earned so much respect and gratitude from the judicial officers in the entire Karnataka. He did hand holding, he gave a lot of attention and his time, despite the fact that he was not even revealing to most people. He was undergoing treatment for the most deadly, unmentionable disease, C, cancer. I share something very common with not only my surname, there's an interesting anecdote. I'll make a reference to that. We hail from the same place. I will. It's very emotional for me. Certain portion of that, I have prepared a small note, and then I will say something extempore. When I was a freshly minted lawyer in Mangalore, sometime in 1986, Justice Bhat had addressed a gathering of advocates, which was very stirring. He is very eloquent, he is a great orator in the right sense, like, the Roman times. He was then a sitting judge of Kerala High Court. When I mentioned it to my senior, Sri N. Srinivas Rao, who is happily around, he told me that Justice Bhat began his career as an advocate in Mangalore. That is what you have referred to as his practice in the Madras state. Then my district belonged to the Madras presidency. And they were contemporaries and great friends, my senior and he. And they had played different roles together whenever Bar Association staged dramas as part of its annual day cultural activities. He's so full of life, and so, this is because of his varied interests. Apart from politics, nobody has referred to this aspect of his, life and career. My senior, very tall and elegant person, and UL Bhat, though a bit shorter, another handsome person. My senior used to say they used to play hero and heroine. It's another matter that UL Bhat rose to become a judicial hero. So different roles, that was how I came to know of Justice Bhat for the first time. My first encounter with him was truly dramatic. I had attended a dinner sometime in 2004 or 2005. I was maybe 7 years old in the judiciary at that time, at our Karnataka Judicial Academy. I was taking my meal at a corner of the hall. We are a bit shy when big people are around. And they are very sensitive if you occupy the center stage also. You made a reference to his not being obsequious. The situation is far from ideal even now. So I suddenly heard a loud remark, "You are not the only Bhat in this hall." I looked in that direction, found the owner of the voice quite distinguished and venerable, and greeted him with due respect. Noting my puzzlement, he introduced himself. Look at his humility. He introduced himself as UL Bhat. That was our first ever physical meeting, and I never quite mustered courage to ask him how did he recognize me. I believe that was the hallmark of this great man. He identified officers and went out of his way to encourage and guide them. Soon thereafter, I started calling on him very frequently. We used to have telephonic conversations and very frequent meetings and discussions and debates. Sometimes they used to get a little louder. Both of us used to hold our fort, and it was, very interesting. I must, refer to page 81 of his autobiography, the story of a Chief Justice. He says, I am quick to anger, which, however, subsides quickly. Why I am referring to this particular, statement he has made is he has made it in a different context about Justice Sadashivam of Kerala High Court. He had a brush with him. In that context, he said, but he spoke the whole truth when he made this statement. I can vouch for this fact. It was sometime in March 2013. I was then director of Karnataka Judicial Academy. We used to debate and discuss a lot on various subjects, not necessarily legal, including political and dialectical issues also. We had very interesting time together for a long time. By then, he had finished writing his autobiography. I didn't know that. One evening, he suddenly handed a typed manuscript of his autobiography, which has now appeared as Story of a Chief Justice. It had no title at that time. He handed it over to me just like that, a typed manuscript, in the evening. I went home, read through the whole text, the entire this book. I found a lot of typographical errors and little grammatical inaccuracies here and there, which naturally occurred on account of somebody writing, the written. He wrote here. He used to prepare all notes and everything by hand, beautiful handwriting. But maybe his son, I was told, did that. There were some mistakes and footnotes and all that. I corrected it and gave it in the morning. The moment he set his eyes on the manuscript, he lost his temper. Who authorized you to do this correction? He bellowed actually. Anybody else would have become nervous. And, I just smiled at him and he became impatient. I demand an explanation from you. That was how he was. Very stern and, brooking no nonsense. So I said, sir, you handed over the manuscript to me. I silently took it. I thought since you had handed over the manuscript, I could do some corrections. And you go through that. If those corrections are, based on some misapprehension or misunderstanding, you can still remove that. No, I want an explanation from you. Why did you do that? I said, sir, I have very great, this is what I told him. I have very high regard for you because of my interaction with you and from the account I am getting from my wards here. So I thought I can't allow under your great name a text going with lot of mistakes. He immediately cooled down. He patted my back and started, saying, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But I have another question to ask. You can't avoid. Did you sleep last night? Because this is a huge text. How could you go through this in such a short span and everything you have attended to so meticulously? I said, I won't answer you. He said, why? You have been telling that you were a very hard working taskmaster. And if I answer, I will be disrespecting you and therefore I will not answer. Thereafter, our relationship started becoming more intense. And as Justice Ravindra Bhat mentioned, he had little problem in his career. Justice Bhat took so much interest and he used to call me and explain me, tell me, don't worry. I won't go into that aspect more deeply because it is certain characteristics and character traits which I also partook from Justice V.L. Bhatt. I ended up suffering a lot of false allegations and these kinds of things. And essentially, people thought I was irreverent and therefore I shouldn't get what was my due. That's another matter. So I will also draw your, the august audience, the attention to page 65 is 5 of his autobiography. While describing Mr. Justice P.T. Raman Nair, who was the Chief Justice of Kerala High Court, and who had the distinction of heading the district and sessions court in my district, Mangalore. He was an ICS judge, made a great name for his fairness. He says something. He met P.T. Raman Nair. Then page 65, very interesting. This sums up the personality of UL Bhat. His frankness, his honesty about himself. UL Bhat, sir, I would like to ask something. May I do so? Now, within parenthesis, bracket, he makes a remark about Justice P.T. Nair, Chief Justice. He inclined his massive head with a smile, gracious and also slightly sarcastic, for he was well known for his graciousness, sarcasm, and frank and often cutting remarks. What follows is devastating, very interesting. That sums up his personality. He says, perhaps subconsciously I try to model myself on him. So many people, so many speakers today have spoken about his wit, sarcasm, his outspoken, cutting remarks, which was, ultimately put under the parenthesis of being irreverent. But he was being true to himself and true to the oath he had taken. This is the greatness of the man. And he, of course, attributed this to his master, the great Chief Justice P.T. Raman Nair. The next, a lot of things have been said. I won't talk about our personal interactions and very interesting things. I'll skip it is for another occasion. Page 123. Page 123 of this autobiography, because I have gone through it so meticulously, I could easily locate that. He makes a conclusion which, I demand on your time. I will just read this. Some persons in our country are prepared to place touching faith in the efficiency and investigational integrity of the police. Madhavan's case is a warning to all such simpletons. This is basically addressed to us judges and institutions and committees that he perhaps addresses to the law commissions as well. This includes the Justice Malimath Committee, which has recommended far-reaching changes in the law regarding burden of proof, resting on the prosecution and casting burden partly on the accused, and requiring the accused to give evidence and face cross-examination. The Parliament should think again and again before tinkering with this branch of law as it exists at present. Now, here we have to mourn not the death of Justice UL, but who will be continued to be remembered, but mourn the loss of discussion and debates for which Parliament is meant, not for fights and fisticuffs. As one of the eminent authors who wrote on English Constitution, Walter Bagehot, said. He was referring to this dilution of the principle of doctrine of silence and burden of proof. Look at the way we have traveled. Now we have these unpronounceable 3 enactments that have come. Bharatiya kind of this thing. I don't have any quarrels with that, but we would have better been spared of this Hindi nomenclature, which will take quite some time for us to internalize and say effortlessly. So this is, look at his sagacity. Look at his sagacity, his wisdom, the fundamental principles on which the criminal jurisprudence has been placed. like I forget, the PV Council in in a Section 27 Evidence Act, very very well known decision of the PV Council. Yes, sir.
Pulikuri Kotaya.
Yes, sir. Please read that. There, the learned law lords have said, if the police mind, they have a way of extracting the truth from the accused. That is why doctrine of silence is so much important in a country where police and their masters wield large measure of power, which can upend the system of justice. So this sagacity, he knew where we are heading and the kind of cliff we may once reach, and there is no end. We'll be falling into, the very pit. We have not, by God's grace, not yet reached that bad state of affairs. But he sounded a bell. Better let us hark to that and increase our wisdom while new laws are being enacted. And so far as Chief Justice U.L. Bhatt is concerned, Mr. Tankha mentioned the learned senior counsel, and all of us are saying amen with him, that his memory will last forever. His physical mortal remains might have gone, and he was a man who wouldn't suffer fools gladly. And he wouldn't like us mourning his death and talking, about all kinds of rest in peace and all that. He once told me, he told me, I dislike this kind of, people coming and touching feet. So when I see people inclining to do that, bending slightly forward, I help them by lifting my foot. He physically demonstrated to me. So he wouldn't personally, at least Hari will be knowing, Rashid would be knowing because of your close interaction. He never actually disliked this kind of, tokenisms. We will be doing lasting service to ourselves if we continue to remember what Justice U.L. Bhatt stood for. In spite of his highly political inclinations, he was telling me, there are two kinds of judges who were highly political before they became judges. And once they, put on their robes, they are impartial and no politics. They have no isms. And there are another kind of judges who are completely, who have had no connection with any political parties, but start becoming stooges of certain masters belonging to certain classes. I say this kind of, I use this expression because Justice U.L. Bhatt would have desired no less from me. I owe this duty to him, and I say this, and I don't know how to end my, these few words, because if I pray for eternal Sadgati for him, though he said the same thing in his preface to the book with reference to his brother-in-law, he would mistake me saying this Bhatt, who was with me for such a long time, did not understand me fully. My enormous respects to his memory, and I think we will only be doing service to ourselves if we cultivate this habit of being totally independent, no matter what the consequence is, and not being obsequious to the powers. And I wouldn't dilate on this, but I very distinctly remember he's telling one of these, sending a message to one of the Supreme Court judges who later became Chief Justice of India. State of Madhya Pradesh has got only one Chief Justice. No two Chief Justices. When we see day in and day out Supreme Court judges, even without referring to the Chief Justice, coming to some small places and calling PWD officers. I have seen it myself happening this in my own district, and instructing this should be to please the bar. I refuse to go along with him for any court, either foundation stone laying ceremonies or opening of buildings because of this kind of hypocrisy and this kind of, treating chief justices like this. This would not have been suffered gladly by Chief Justice UL Bhat. Thank you. I'm very grateful to the august audience. This is a very, I am becoming a bit emotional because I knew he was honest to the core, and hypocrisy was something he couldn't stand. And as he said, he imbibed certain characteristics of P.T. Nair, which he exhibited to us. And I certainly believed in emulating them to the extent that is humanly possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your address, sir. Now I would request Justice Shaji P. Chali to address. I think he was a lawyer practicing in the High Court. His name is shown, his iPad is shown. Anyway, I think. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to make a small speech because we are already late. I consumed sufficient time. My memory of Justice Bhat has started when I became an advocate in the year 1986, and I used to appear before Justice Bhatt's court representing my senior's case, the division bench, while sitting in the criminal side as well as in other civil and service matters. I used to receive a lot of encouragement from Justice Bhatt, as he used to do to the young members of the bar. And I remember I had a close association with Justice Bhatt when I became the president of the bar in the year 2014. Then the Judicial Academy was inviting Justice Bhatt for a program in the Judicial Academy. And I requested them to give me an opportunity to take a class on Evidence Act, because we were conducting the continuous legal education in the year 2014. And it was, I remember, it was the 50th class Justice Bhatt took. On that day, book release was also the Justice K.T. Thomas was also present. And if my memory is correct, that was on 8th December 2014. Thereafter, I used to call him very frequently till the year 2019. Thereafter, many of us pointed out, thereafter Justice Bhatt was not picking up phone thereafter, must be due to health reasons. And I later realized that he has shifted from Bangalore to Bombay along with his son later to Delhi. Anyway, very sweet memories of Justice Bhatt. I believe that I could become a lawyer and later became a judge of the Kerala High Court, consequent on the encouragement given by Justice Bhatt. I always remember him as a towering personality in my life. And I remember, he always remember Justice Bhatt with reverence and gratitude. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I extend my heartfelt condolences to the family, and let his soul rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I invite Lakshmi Kumaran, sir, who is a senior counsel in the Supreme Court of India, kindly address the gathering.
Good evening to all senior judges before whom I had the privilege of arguing matters. I must say, I didn't have the privilege of arguing matters before Justice B.L. Bhatt when he was in Kerala High Court or Madhya Pradesh or in Guwahati. He became the president of the CGAT. At that time, it's called CGAT. And he came to Delhi. And we didn't know his background. We started appearing. For me, it was like training in the courtroom. The way he will put questions and elicit answers is something remarkable. When he asks a question, and if I don't respond, when I say I will come back a little later, he will say, Mr. Lakshmi Kumar, I put a question, you have no answer. I used to shut up. But that made me prepare so well in all the matters. I used to argue 2 or 3 matters a day before him. He shaped me. I was only 10 years old in my profession when he came. The 3 years was like a guru teaching the Sishya. In the courtroom, I used to remember is exactly what happened in Bhagavad Gita, where in the battlefield, the guru taught Arjuna. I still have the same feeling that he was indeed my guru, the way he taught me. The tribunal also was not in good shape when he came in. There were a lot of administrative issues, pendencies, and the members were not appointed in time, etc. He had a magic wand in putting things in order. Now I realize all the senior judges mentioning and Mr. Tankha mentioning about how he brought discipline into the Madhya Pradesh High Court. I am not surprised now. CGAT is a very small organization as compared to the Madhya Pradesh High Court and the judiciary there. It was child's play for him, but he encouraged all the juniors. And I also know quite a few lawyers could not answer his questions. They avoided. And they never came up. Those who avoided him, it is their loss. It is not his loss. But he did encourage. And he is very stern in his questions. And if you are not prepared, he will make you naked. As simple as that. That made us work hard and hard. And on the last day, when he was limiting his office, evening he called me and he said, Lakshmi, I want to come to your office and home. I said, most welcome. He came and saw books, especially technical books, which I used to refer. Now I know how you study as far as technical books are concerned. He had his wife also came along. We had lunch next day. And then he went. But I never lost touch with him. As Shishya to Guru, that relationship will continue forever. Wherever I used to go to Bangalore, I used to meet him. Like Mr. Tankha said, morning 6:30, he gets a call saying that I am Bhat here. Yes, he does it. He did it to me several times. But I never asked him which Bhat. Because I only know one Bhat who will call me at those times. He's a great man. And I knew that when his health was deteriorating, and then when he came to live in Delhi, I must say my friend Mr. Basant was in always touch with him when he was in Mumbai or in Delhi. And both of us decided to go to his home on his birthday, the last birthday. We were there more than 3-4 hours. He asked all questions, what I'm doing, what the stat is doing, all those things, etc. Remembered everything. We had a good lunch. And he was extremely happy that both of us were there and then spending quality time with him. I didn't realize that will be his last birthday. We will see him. But yeah, the satisfaction comes to me that I could at least go to him, meet him, and spend time with him. He will continue to my guru. He will guide me wherever he is, whether on earth or elsewhere. I won't forget. He said, Lakshmi, I like you as a lawyer, not only because of your preparations and erudition, but also ethical standards. You kept very high standards and you also mentored several juniors. And you sacrificed not to take a seniorship because you would have taken only half a dozen juniors to mentor. Now you are mentoring more than 500. I'm extremely happy. He has a nice way of putting things, encouraging. And I remember him fondly. I'll remember him fondly forever. Whatever was a loss to the Supreme Court was a gain to the CGAT and to unknown persons like me, a father-like figure who taught how to handle matters in the courts. I am ever grateful to him and to his family. Dr. Basant, thank you very much for taking me to his home that day. And I still remember. And let his soul rest in peace. We'll all pray for his peacefulness. But at least I will remember what he did to me. Whatever I am today as a lawyer, it is wholly and solely because of him. Thank you, all of you. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the interaction. Thank you very much. Now, Justice Ramkumar, who was very close to Justice Bhatt, is unable to attend today because he is not in the country. He has sent a message and he has asked me to read that. May I, with your permission, read that? It is titled Justice UL Bhatt, Whom I Know. He says, news about the demise of Justice UL Bhatt in the night of 6 June 2024 was indeed sad and shocking to all concerned. He was a colossus of Indian judiciary as far as the legal fraternity in India was concerned, and more so the judiciary in the state. Apart from being brilliant and exceptionally erudite, he was a man of outstanding qualities. It was heard that during his years of practice as a lawyer, Justice Bhatt owed allegiance to the Communist Party of India and was a staunch affiliate of that political party. There was therefore some apprehensions in some quarters that he would be a partisan judge and his political bias would be reflected in his outlooks and verdicts. But all such fears were totally unfounded. Justice Bhatt was 100% upright, clean, and law-abiding in his judgments and never allowed his personal views to color his verdicts. Such was the integrity of the great man. Justice Bhatt was a noble human being, full of common sense and empathy for the underprivileged, and had a sublime level of thinking much ahead of his times. Justice Bhatt was more loved through reverence than through any other bond of affection by mortals like me. Besides being quick-witted, he had a razor-sharp intellect. He was forthright in his views. He never minced words and had the courage of his own conviction. He disliked flattery and platitudes. Some of his comments and remarks, made both inside and outside the courts, were so apt and calculating that they produced different impulses in different persons about whom such comments and remarks were made. As a judge, he excelled in all jurisdiction, both in the High Court of Kerala and other courts. Being innately a forensic pedagogue with a touch of class, all his lectures in the High Court in the Kerala Judicial Academy were unforgettable theorems. Myself, as a lawyer, had the privilege of arguing even complicated civil cases before him, and he had the rare quality of comprehending the facts and law with remarkable felicity and elegance. After Justice Bhatt's retirement and settlement in Bangalore, we used to communicate through land phone for several years. Every time it was Justice Bhatt who used to call me, and I feared to do so, except on occasions when he asked me to call him. It was none other than Justice Bhatt who gave me the inspiration to write articles in law, saying that I was cut out for the job. I do not know whether my articles have measured up to the standards expected of me. Some of his path-breaking judgments rendered from the Kerala High Court received the imprimatur of approval at the hands of the Supreme Court of India. Justice Bhatt deserved to adorn the seat of the Supreme Court by any standards. Unfortunately, those at the helm of affairs failed to see his acumen, worth, and potential of this great man. It is really a loss for the country that we did not have Justice Bhatt in the Supreme Court. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you. Sir, I now invite Justice Basant. In fact, Justice Basant told us that he would speak finally. It is more befitting that he speaks, concludes this entire session. Sir, I invite you. Thank you.
Respected members who have assembled here, let me at the outset congratulate Live Law for having taken this initiative to remember, that's how they called it, remember Justice Bhat. I always had a feeling that Justice Bhatt's departure also deserves to be celebrated better. Well, I do not look at it. Some of you have already said that. This is not an occasion to mourn or condole the death of Justice Bhatt. It's really an occasion to celebrate his life. Some lives deserve to be celebrated more than deaths being mourned. Justice Bhatt's life was outstanding. It does not depend on where in the hierarchy you reach. What matters is how you have performed and where you reached. I don't think, I wouldn't like even to mention that he was not elevated to the Supreme Court and the reasons for that. I would think that he excelled where he was, where he reached, and that is to be celebrated. I look at this opportunity today as an occasion to celebrate the illustrious life of Justice Bhatt, and my kudos to the Live Law and its leaders, Rashid and others, for having taken that initiative. I was always feeling sad and depressed that no one took it up at this level, and I'm very happy that the Live Law has taken it up. Thank you for that. Live Law calls this as an occasion where friends, colleagues, and shishyas, the disciples of Justice Bhatt, want to celebrate his life. I belong to the last category of shishyas of Justice Bhatt, and I feel really happy and thrilled that I have this opportunity to be part of this function where people like me who accept him as our guru, we are all shishyas of the great soul, we have the occasion to be part of this function. I knew Justice Bhatt from very early days. When I say knew, that is a big distance between me and Justice Bhatt. I was a very junior lawyer who enrolled in 1973, practicing in the district court, the district and subordinate courts at Calicut. And that is where we found this very handsome, very sharp, very, very intellectually very high, very sociable, but very strict, a very hard disciplinarian, a person who tolerated no nonsense, who was always who was ruthlessly forthright in the expressions of opinion that he made. That was Justice Bhatt. I always felt that he would have very little friends for what he has done to them. But what he really did was that he was a role model for all of us. I would think the entire judiciary, the entire polity that he served at the relevant time. I would not think that anyone would have memories about Justice Bhatt for having done something personally to him, but Justice Bhatt would have done whatever each one deserved. When I heard Mr. Kumaran speaking about Lakshmi Kumaran speaking about that, when I heard Mr. Krishna Bhatt speaking about that, I always thought Justice Bhatt was one who gave each one what he deserved. And therefore, all of us, if we look at it, what he has done for you, I think personally that he was a role model for everyone in the respective fields. You think of a very effective session judge, he was a role model. You think of a person who has an outstandingly sharp intellect, he was that. A man who had an outstandingly sharp mind, he was that. An outstanding administrator, he was that. Look at it from any angle. One who started, perhaps only Krishna Bhatt said about that. The idea of judge education was conceived in the Kerala High Court for the first time. And it was from there that the Directorate of Training started, which has now bloomed into judicial academies and under all high courts and the National Judicial Academy. I don't know how many of you would remember that the the Kerala Training Directorate, as they call it, Directorate of Training, was the brainchild of the superheroes of that time, Justice Bhat, Justice Malimath, Justice Thomas, and others also. Well, you think of any field that he has touched, I think he remained a role model. People have spoken about the various dimensions of his personality. I don't think this is the time that I can take draw any further time on that. Just two things I'll mention, and I think I'll be done with that. Justice Bhat was a judge of the subordinate judiciary. He hailed from the subordinate judiciary. He practiced in not even a district court. Kasaragod had only a Munsis court, and later on a sub-court at that place. He hailed from that constituency of very ordinary grassroots level lawyer and a judge. He rose to great heights. Wherever he was, he brought glory to the institutions to which he earlier belonged. The subordinate judiciary in Kerala particularly, and subordinate judiciary in India perhaps, can be proud of the fact that Justice Bhat hailed from the subordinate judiciary. Well, such was the person. It's very few of us who have been able to make. Of course, Kerala has an exceptional galaxy of persons who rose from the subordinate judiciary and made it big at the national level also. And Justice Bhat was one of them, one of the leaders of that group, which established that hailing from the subordinate judiciary, you can do equally well or even outdo. I believe in Justice Bhatt's period, we had judges from the subordinate judiciary who were elevated, who were equal to the others, and maybe at times they far outdid the others also. And therefore, the first thing that I think when I think of him, he is the one who brought prestige, glory, honor to the subordinate judiciary. He proved that people in the subordinate judiciary can also be outstanding judges of character, of caliber, of quality. And that, I think, is one aspect that I wanted to mention from where he began and where he reached. Well, another thing that has always fascinated me about Justice Bhat is how he enjoyed his work. Well, I remember some of his very, very eloquent quotes. I think once he was evidently quoting from somewhere, he said, "The advantage of enjoying your work is that you don't have to work thereafter." He was that. He enjoyed his work so thoroughly that work was pleasure for him. I remember I'll just close with that one story, the one anecdote which he used to say in very close. He said, he told us that as a young boy, his father used to take him for feasts, sadhyas, marriage feasts, etc. And at every time he started from house, he would think of what the feast today would be, what ghee that would be, what sweet there would be. He would think of all that and fancy what it could be. He said, today, every day when I start from my home to the court, when I sit in the car, I think of what feast is going to be offered to me in the court today by my lawyers and judges. Well, I feel the capacity, his ability to enjoy his work, the ability to really derive rapturous pleasure from the work that he did is something that every judge, every lawyer, every professional, every working person can really be happy and be proud of. We can try to emulate that. I always feel that I'm a favored child of God because God has given me the opportunity to interact with great people. I may be a very poor level person, but the opportunity that I have got to interact with really great people has always enriched me. And Justice Bhat, I believe, is one of the forerunners in the category that made me the favored child of God by giving me opportunity to know him, to be with him, to understand him. I told you I started my career and he had joined the Calicut judiciary as its head. I had very few occasions to appear before him, but he remembered me all through. Later, when I joined as a judge of the district judge in the Kerala Subordinate Judiciary, he was my first portfolio judge, the presiding judge of my district. I remember the encouragement that I received from him. Not only me, when I say me, I refer to all the judges in the district. I don't know. These days, you do not have that practice very much in vogue. The calendars used to be vetted by him with such great enthusiasm. And initial days, if I think I have written a good judgment, back would come the reply, I read your judgment, that was good. If a judgment of mine were not good, he would immediately say, Vasant, you have not looked into that aspect. Well, who could ever think of subordinate judges and try to encourage them be involved in their work? It's something out of the ordinary. I always, as Mr. Lakshmi Kumaran said, I always regard him as my guru. When one of the outstanding compliments, if I may call so, that I received was, I was a judge in one district. When Justice Bhat left Kerala, he called me and said, I want you to be the district judge of Kasaragod, my native district, in your next term. Well, you may have won many, many accolades and appreciations in your life. But for Justice Bhat to call me and say, I must go to his district and preside over that district for a term, that was something which is beyond the happiest imagination that I could have. We maintained that relationship. As someone said, every time I went to Bangalore, my visit to Bangalore was never complete without visiting Justice Bhat. We had a wonderful relationship with the family of Justice Bhat also. We have very kind, nice memories of their kindness to us. I remember having gone to see Justice Bhat in Bangalore, and later when he shifted to Bombay, and later then he came to Delhi. And then Mr. Murali Kumaran did not perhaps say that. I feel honored that Justice Bhat said that he wants only two people for his celebrate the 90th birthday celebration. We had thought of celebrating it in a much bigger way, but unfortunately he fell sick and he was not able. He did not permit us to do that, and therefore he said it is enough if I have just two representatives, and therefore he wanted Mr. Murali Kumaran and me to be there. And I really think of the good opportunity, the wonderful opportunity, wonderful blessing that we had to be with him on that last birthday of his. I bow down in reverence before his memory. Pranams from the Shishya to my great outstanding Guru. I would not say may his role rest in peace. May the example that he has set continue to inspire generations of lawyers and judges, and that would be the greatest compliment that we can pay to the departed soul. My pranams to my revered Guru. Thank you.
So you're on mute.
Hari is muted.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Justice Suraj Bhat is here. Justice Bhat was staying with him during his last days. And also, he was also staying with him when I used to visit his houses, HSR layout. I asked him to propose the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Honorable judges, members of the judicial fraternity, and friends of my father, Justice Bhat, good evening to all of you. As poignant as the occasion is, it's been a pleasure and privilege to listen to each one of you. Many of you have known since my childhood as close associates and friends of my father. Many of you I would have interacted more briefly, given that you encountered him at a more later stage of life. But thank you for leaving me and my family with all these memories of him. And thank you to Rashid, Justice Basant, Mr. Harindranath, and all others who participated in organizing this event. inviting me and extending the link to all our family to hear all of you speaking. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. The function is over, sir. Thank you. Thanks to all. Thank you.
Very good, very well conducted. I'm so happy, Hari.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Comes very near our expectation, though I wanted it to be held in the big hall of the Kerala High Court. We couldn't do that, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And thanks to all of you, go, and particularly Rashid. I thought Rashid would speak a word. You didn't include that. I think we owe a debt of gratitude to him. So
Yes,
for
really.
having organized this function, really.
Really great.
It's really so kind, courteous, and what shall I say, so gracious of him to have done that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
I was feeling so upset, Hari. We could not do that in the Kerala. Somewhere in Kerala, I was not there also.
In a way, this is better, sir, because
this is better. The outreach is much better, and you had a better cross section.
Yes.
If we had a physical function, we would not have had all the great people assembled here. Even Mr. Bhat is there. Maybe he would still have come from Bangalore, but still, we may not have. This reach would not have.
Justice KG Balakrishnan, Justice Gopala, Gowda, all of them.
Yeah, all of them came. Hari, I don't know how many of you are remaining. Is there a foundation